We are going to get started in just a moment, but thank you guys for coming to our Ladies of Sound community chat for today. We have a really special guest who we're super honored and excited to have and chat with today. So you guys already know our Ladies of Sound community chats is a space to connect, support, and celebrate each other and share stories and knowledge. And we do this every Tuesday at 6 p.m. And on Thursdays, you see there, we do our artist wellness, which, as DJs, we do need to take care of our mind, body, and soul. So we do that and feature yoga, or we have mindset coaches and what mental health. So if you guys ever want to check that out, that's available on Thursdays. So, and we know some of you have been here before, but you guys already know we got to go over the house rules. So the house rules for today are the same as always, but for anybody new, if you can please make sure you guys are on mute when you are not speaking. And for your viewing experience, if you click on the top corner of your screen, you can actually click on do not show non-video participants. So you can either go from speaker view, where you can see our guest today or whoever's speaking, or on gallery view if you prefer to see all the video. Don't be shy. Please go into the chat and engage and talk while we're going along with our guest today. And please be kind and positive. We are excited to host a Q&A today and hope you guys have a lot of questions. But when we get to that portion, if you please can either click on the raise your hand or type a 1 in the chat if you have a question. We're going to answer them in chronological order and then proceed with the unmute once either myself or Sam gives you the cue. And without further ado, today. So you guys already know, my name is Maricel. I'm the principal of the Beat Junkie Institute of Sound and Ladies of Sound founder. And we have Sammy G, DJ marketing admin at BJ iOS, and also my co-founder. And exciting today, guys. Look at that fly logo. We have the incredible Kuttin Kandi here today with us, guys. Yes, one and only. She is part of the Fifth Platoon DJ crew, hip hop feminist and activist and poet. So hello, Kandi. Say hi to everybody.
Hi, everybody. Such an honor to be here. I'm excited to meet with y'all and build and just, chat it up. So thanks for having me here.
Thank you so much. We know you are a super busy woman. You guys will definitely hear about that and all the 5 million things that she'll be having on her plate at once. But it really means a lot that you're taking the time for us, especially because we have a lot of women in the room that are part of the school who are either just starting to learn how to DJ or they were just about getting on those gigs finally before COVID started. And we're just here to soak up everything that you have to drop the knowledge on. So we wanted to first start on pretty much how did everything start for you? We know that you grew up in Queens, you were born and raised, and how did that kind of bring in, the hip hop culture for you growing up?
Oh, thanks for that question. These are always hard because there's so many things in my life that have led me. I could start from my father, who was a record collector, loved music tremendously. I still have his vinyl till this day, but also just the people in my life who I grew up with. I grew up in Flushing, and if anyone's familiar with Flushing, Queens, and in a community of folks where I grew up with people who just loved hip hop. I grew up in a predominantly Black community, but if you know Flushing, it's also known as like the second Chinatown of New York City, but so I grew up with a good amount of diverse communities. Queens is known as the crossroads of the world, but really growing up in a community of folks that like hip hop was part of their everyday life and the culture. But it wasn't until I was really around a lot of the pioneers of hip hop that really took me in and taught me so much about hip hop culture, many whom we know as the founding fathers of hip hop, but also the DJ community, growing up even in the Filipino community, meeting Filipino DJs. So even before I met Fifth Platoon, I was part of a mobile DJ group called IBP, Intro Bass Productions. But in high school, being around other Filipino DJs in high school, which my high school that I went to, which was Hillcrest High School, which is a predominantly Black, West Caribbean, and Guyanese, Trinidadian community. But also the Filipinos that were there. So a lot of them were Filipino DJs who I met, called 3DS, who initially took me in before I even met IBP, which Rolly Bro was also a part of. So 3DS really taught me how to mix, how to do, how to DJ on vinyl, what that was like. And then I met IBP, and IBP really took me in, and we were doing a lot of weddings, sweet 16s, all the mobile DJing that we did in the 90s together. And I was literally just mostly in the back end learning how to DJ and really how to hold those record crates and how to bring them in. And then I was often a lot of times like the one that introduced people at weddings when they come in. Like that was literally my role until I really started learning how to DJ. And then eventually meeting Fifth Platoon, which when Rolly started competing, I ended up competing alongside, because I would be in the cut in the background, like secretly learning, because I would attend all the practice sessions, all the rehearsals, and I wanted to be taken seriously, because a lot of times when, especially in the 90s, where we didn't see a lot of women competitors back then. There were a few, and I know of course, there was Jazzy Joyce in New York City, there was Lazy K, those prominent DJs who actually competed, and meeting them, and then not always seeing them in a lot of the spaces. And I felt like, oh, I had to really learn how to compete just like them. I wanted to be like them, but it wasn't until I saw DJ Symphony, while they inspired me, but it wasn't until I saw Symphony like beat juggling, I was like, oh, and that became even more of an inspiration as well, because seeing another Panay, you know, being a DJ up there, I just got super inspired. And so I said, I can do this too. So Symphony had a lot to do with why, while I was inspired by Lazy K and Jazzy Joyce and Coco Chanel and these prominent New York City DJs, Symphony, like her being a turntablist, like really influenced me. And then I started competing in the competitions, but I still felt like I couldn't earn the title as a DJ until I really learned how, or a turntablist, until I really learned how to do a lot of those things. So I wanted to stay in secret before I named myself a DJ. So I laid low in the cut for about 2 years, practicing behind the scenes. No one knew I was learning. Like when the Fifth Platoon crew would practice in their sessions with the executioners, we would have a lot of sessions together. Back then they were the X-Men, and they would have like their bedroom DJ contests, and I would be the judge half the time, and they would throw in $1 or $5 in a pot, and they would battle each other during the practice sessions, and I'd be the judge, like judging who in the executioners won that battle for the night. And so what they didn't know is when they would go for their smoking breaks, or when they would have their break sessions, I would be trying to do what they did. And then I would go home and I would try the patterns that they were doing. And then I would eventually do them. And then my first actual showcase as a turntablist, I would say, was the very first table turns. And there were over 200 DJs, because it was held at the New Yorican Poetry's Cafe, and it was the first open turntable event. And I did a showcase of beat juggling and scratching. And at the time, people in the East Coast, there were only a few DJs in the East Coast at the time who could actually do certain scratches. There were, of course, the patterns that everyone knew in terms of transforming in the East Coast, but like say the flare scratch, you know, doing a lot of those cuts like the orbit and crabbing. Not a lot of DJs were doing that as of yet. But so when I started doing it and I was a woman DJ, people were kind of really thrown aback. They were like, oh shoot, you know, we haven't seen that yet. So being the fact that there were only about 3 DJs at the time, there was DJ Doughboy, DJ Neil Armstrong from my crew, and DJ Rob Swift, who were able to flare in the East Coast at the time, and then myself. So people were kind of really thrown back that I was crabbing and doing a lot of the cuts that a lot of the West Coast DJs, and back then it was so different. We didn't have the internet to really learn. So I was learning through listening to a lot of Kubert's tapes on how to do a lot of the cuts. I would rewind over and over. And I remember the time I discovered how to do a double click flare I was on a phone call with my friend DJ Fat Fingers when I said, I think he's doing a drag right there. That's how he's doing it. So we didn't have these videos to like really learn, and we had to really listen to the sounds. And that's how I learned how to do it. And then even my partner at the time, Rolly, was thrown back like, oh shit, you learned how to do that cut. Because me and Rolly actually taught it, like, he really guided me a lot, teaching me some patterns in beat juggling, and then eventually learning a lot of it on my own and developing together with the crew and developing beat juggles together and creating songs. So that's kind of a little bit of gist in a quick summary of how I got into it all, and when I literally exposed to everybody that I learned in secrecy for 2 years without telling anybody.
Wow, wow. And if you guys want to take a look at, Kandi DJing, you can look it up on YouTube. I wish I could show it here today, but it creates a lag. But that's, so for 2 years in secret, nobody knew, and you were literally just by ear and memory going home and listening and trying all these things yourself. How was that? How was that when they all realized that you were nice with it and that you were even practicing? Did they have any inkling or any idea that you were doing this?
No, only a few people knew. Like Rolling knew, my crew knew. Well, they weren't my crew yet. I had to earn a place in the 5th platoon, so I wasn't like thrown in. I had to earn it. I had to battle to be put in the crew. But no one knew except the 5th platoon. And
Wow.
so, and maybe my crew anomalies. Like my crew anomalies knew, but no one else knew. So people were just, I'm laughing now because I remember people's faces, and I mean, everyone was there. Apollo, A-Track, everybody was there. They flown in for the very first table turns, like big table turns, because everyone was thrown away, and it was almost every like core good amount of DJs in New York City. People came in from Philly. People drove in everywhere. Everyone was there. If you ever experienced table turns, I mean, it was the most amazing time in history, the way it was then. How everybody came from far and wide, traveling every freaking first Sunday of the month to attend table turns. So people were just thrown away, like that. I was not only able to scratch those difficult scratches at the time, I was also beat juggling, because that's when I did the double swing patterns as well. They're called all differently now, but I was also doing chase patterns then, and they hadn't seen a woman do that either, and much less other men DJs do it either, who were still learning a lot of these patterns. So it was very new at the time that people were developing these patterns.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love that.
You make it with the way that you just breeze through that, the beginning of your career. You made it sound so easy to just kind of go in there and try it for yourself. What gave you the courage? I mean, you were a young woman, I'm sure in many times in rooms full of just men where you were the only one there, right? So as a young woman, especially, I'm sure you were starting to travel once you started battling, right? What was that? What gave you that push and that courage to just be like, I don't really care. I'm going to do this for me because I want to do it. Like, especially in this kind of boys club of a industry, right?
Good question. I don't even know. I mean, I was just so zoned in. I was really zoned in and like, oh, I got to learn this. This is so, like, I really loved it. I found something that I really wanted to do, and I was committed to it. There was some kind of commitment and dedication, because I loved music and I loved learning, and I would practice 6 hours a day, 7 hours, trying to learn patterns and then developing songs out of it, manipulating it to turn into routines. So something about it, I mean, the courage, I didn't even realize what I was doing until I did it. Like, I didn't even realize half the time. And it wasn't until like literally how it was impacting women. I didn't even realize it till then. So like right after the DMC 98, when I competed in the USA finals, women were coming up to me and just telling me like, oh my God, thank you so much. Like, I had no idea the impact I was doing. And it wasn't until like literally I had a gig in Canada where somebody, a person came up to me and he told me, my girlfriend has a letter for you and she's too shy to meet you, so I'm giving you the letter. And I was like, well, I want to meet her, so take me to her. So he took me to her, and I just said, I wanted to thank you for this letter, which I hadn't read yet. And she just started crying. Like tears were coming in her eyes. And I was like, whoa, I was so thrown back like that, because I'm like, yo, I am not like even like Madonna or anything. And I was just so thrown back. But then it was at that point, especially when I read the letter, which really told me how grateful they were for me as a Pinay as well, as a Filipinx, as a DJ, as a woman, how important I was to them. And it wasn't until then that I realized my responsibility as an artist, my responsibility as a DJ, my responsibility and what role I was playing and impacting. So I think that brought me the most courage to continue proceeding. I think if it wasn't for that and seeing how much impact I was making, because I didn't even realize that majority of my songs were all women in the 98 finals. We're all like, I had Queen Latifah, you know, like I had like Lauryn Hill. And it wasn't until actually Craze, was it Craze or Develop? I think it was either DJ Develop or Craze that said, did you do that intentionally, put all women's songs together? Like, and then I was like, what? I did that? So I think inherently it's in me to be this feminist that I've always been, Pinayist, you know, like that I always understood without back then not being able to articulate the way that I do now, how I always understood my support for all women. So with that being said, I'm really excited y'all have Ladies of Sound, you know?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's women like you that have really paved the way and become such an inspiration for us, especially, you know, because in looking at a lot of, you know, from footage to photos like this, look at that, dead smack in the middle, there you are. And I kind of feel like that's just how it's just really been for such a long time. And for, you know, someone like yourself to one, you know, inherently have competed at that level, and to, you know, done it in a way where it wasn't, you know, it was very genuine and something that you just, like you said, I just put the set together and I had, you know, women artists and women that inspired me, and that was all just a natural thing for you to do, and bringing it to today, you know, at least, you know, for someone that's been around all of this myself, and just seeing a lot of guys, it does make a difference, and such an impact when you look at like a photo like that, and then there's just like one woman there, and you can say, okay, there's someone that, I'm represented, you know, and I think that's also really amazing too, for especially, you know, the Filipino community to see that representation as well, because now you give that community a chance to say, I can see myself, which is very rare, but also women in general, and you know, for Ladies of Sound, you know, it's been a blessing to be able to meet more and more women in this industry, and also be around women that are even just inspired by it and want to start DJing. So thank you for everything that you've done to contribute to this. I know that you say you identify as a feminist, and I want to get to the next slide, please, Sammy G, if you don't mind. But when we talk a little about these photos here, so obviously we have you on the turns here, DJing, and you have a mic in your hand as well. So that's something, you know, when you think DJing, you just think that we're, you know, DJs are behind the decks. It's not oftentimes that they're doing both. I'm still even getting used to just being behind, you know, on the mic, but you're commanding and so commanding in this picture, and I love it. Can you tell us a little bit about, I mean, did you start, you know, your poetry and all of that? I kind of really want to just hear a little bit. I've seen some videos online of you doing these amazing poems, and I'm super inspired by that.
Thanks for asking the poetry question. A lot of people don't always know that, you know. I've been writing poetry since I was like 7 years old. when I first got introduced to it by my mom, because I had difficulty in other areas in school. And my first poem was on a cat on a tree for Halloween. I remember my first poem, and after that, I just fell in love with poetry. And then my very first, like one of, so I loved spoken word tremendously and watching other poets, but it wasn't until like I actually had a DJ gig at a gig in NYU, and it was all women lineup, and we had on that lineup Jessica Caramore, Suhair Hamad, Sarah Jones. Trying to remember all the women. It was such those, if you don't know those three are phenomenal, legendary poets. You had even Asha Bandeli there too. So a lot of them are very phenomenal, legendary poets. Jessica Caramore actually was the first poet on Apollo to win poetry, a spoken word, and to win it for 9 weeks in a row. No one could beat her in Apollo for 9 weeks of spoken word while everyone else is singing, dancing, and all kinds of things, except she kept winning spoken word after spoken word after spoken word. And having met Jessica Caramore and knowing her legendary work, and then being around her as a poet, I love poetry, and I said I could perform my poetry too, not just write it. So, but I felt like, because I didn't do slams, I went to a lot of the slams, but I never entered them because my lane in competing was DJing, not slamming. And I didn't feel like I could really slam as good as others. So, and plus my poems in slams, you only have a 90-second window, just like DJing, there's time limits. And I'm like, my poetry be 11 minutes long. Like, I don't know if I could do under a minute. But, so I just always did it for performance, and I would always start performing. But the mic thing, like literally in a mic, if it wasn't for me being a host at weddings, like that brought me confidence too. Like being a DJ and a host for weddings and being like the one introducing everybody, getting comfortable on the mic, a lot of that also helped. And then over time, becoming a lecturer also helped. You know, I do a lot of speaking engagements throughout this country on everything from hip hop feminism to DJing things to all kinds of things on social justice issues. So getting familiar with that and doing education in other areas outside of DJing is what really brought me the comfortability in the mic. And then just also being a host at a lot of hip hop shows. So I was always a host. I held an open mic for 10 years in New York City called Guerrilla Words with my Guerrilla Words team. And holding those open mics, you know, to support all kinds of writers, not just MCs, not just poets, but even we had comedians, we had playwrights. That brought a lot of comfortability also of being on the mic. So a lot of these different spaces, and it helps that my poetry would also have very much a hip hop feel, of course, because being around legendary poets like Saul Williams and Jessica Caramore, that brought a lot of the hip hop vibe to it, and vice versa, because they also bring a whole lot of the lineage of Black culture and African roots into their work in poetry and justice for Black lives. They've always had that. So a lot of that has influenced the way I contribute to my poetry and how I do my work.
Wow.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's I was gonna say, it's dope to see. You know, as we've been doing these community chats, we've realized, and I mean we knew it before, but now it's showing more that we are able to see all these different sides of DJs. Not only can they just spin, but some of them do yoga, some of them are writers, and you with your poetry and your lecturing as well. Like it's dope to see women be all these different kinds of, you know, have all these different facets. I actually wanted to talk about just your career, even just DJing and becoming more confident in yourself after the DMC and things like that. And then soon after, you know, in the early 2000s when things started to change, technology started to arise, and how did that journey in DJing go for you once, you know, you were so used to vinyl, and then here we even see you with Serato Records. So how did that transition go for you as a DJ, just your journey?
Oh, good question. I'm laughing because I remember the day in the 90s. I mean, back then there was such a movement to protect our vinyl, and we had shirts that said save vinyl, you know, and like I always swore up and down, I will never let go of vinyl. And I still have it. That's still a commitment. I still have my vinyl. But you know, I think just like back then, in the 90s, new DJ mixers would come out, you know, and a lot of us who were turntablists and competed had much to do with giving feedback on mixers back then. So actually, Doug Cohen, who was a founder of Table Turns, and you know, really initiated a lot of these earlier on conversations with Rain and a lot of these folks back in the day, you know, and had much to do with the design of what we have now in the early stages. And then Fifth Platoon, we actually were sponsored by Final Scratch back then, which was actually one of the first for the DBS platform that we have, you know. So we were part of those discussions, and it was very hard. Like I remember having the Serato box. And I had it for 2
still
years.
Have them. Some folks still have those Serato boxes.
Mine is in a box somewhere, to be honest. But I remember when I had it for 2 years, did not touch it because I was like, oh, I can't. And then finally when I did, it was easing the comfort of getting into it. And being able to let go and understand the movements, you know, like even in the 90s when we had new mixers, it was about getting comfortable with them. So it's the same thing but it took me a little bit of time. It was very hard. And then once I got used to it and being able to travel and do gigs that way, it was like, okay, that's it. I'm here. I'm for it, you know, and then DJ controllers. Now I love my DJ controller. Like, I'm like, dang, why didn't I get this sooner? You know? So it's like, it's building the comfortability to these newer technologies and being open to all of them. And there's still so much more. Like equipment comes out even a lot more faster, I feel, than it did back then. And so it's a lot more of equipment that I'm still learning and picking up on, but being open to them is so key in the evolution of the art form.
Yeah, thank you for that.
There's so much evolution in your story outside of just if we're talking like equipment wise, but even just you as a woman, as a DJ, and just as a person in general. It's amazing to hear how your journey has progressed and how it's grown with you. I wanted, yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say just the fact that you're evolving, especially knowing that you started as a turntablist. You know, a lot of people are really diehard about that, and you know, and when it comes to technology, they stick to, you know, just staying on the turns. But the fact that you're able to evolve and you know, say that like, oh, I'm here for carrying this controller and taking to a gig because this is easier. But you know, I love that you're still open to everything, and that's you know, again, part of the, like Sam said, the journey of you just constantly evolving and still being open to learning new things that come out, because yeah, it's like they drop one thing last year, and then the next thing you know, you buy it, and then here's a new thing, and you're like, okay, cool, I'm gonna learn that. It's really, really dope.
And I think it's a matter of like also finding the foundations so it's still present, you know. I think foundational stuff holds history, and it's honoring that history. And also like, you know, certain things of this current digital stage is some of those foundations will actually, not some, I think all of it will hold you to a place of finesse, an extra level of finesse. You know, the issues that we had back then aren't present today, but because a lot of those issues in DJing helped us to become adaptable and flexible, and also like how to handle challenges actually that we don't have today. When with digital age, you're able to, like, if things mess up on the set, you're able to pick up and cover it up much more quicker than you do with when you have a turntable set. Like the record skips, the needles break, like you had to be really be adaptable and be quick to figuring out solutions, where that kind of gives you really a level of finesse that DJs don't have today, to be able to navigate those kind of challenges are really helpful for today. Like if you learn how to spin on vinyl first, I think there are things about vinyl, DJing on vinyl, that teaches you in terms of accuracy, in terms of coordination skills, those kind of things you can learn. And I'm not saying you can't learn those things on a DJ controller or using other platforms, but there's something about vinyl that really teaches you key things in terms of accuracy, speed, even like endurance and durability, whether people believe that or not. It really teaches you way more, another level. And if you try that out, like try doing, I think, doing a set differently on a turntable set as opposed to your DJ controller set, and feel the feels and the differences of that. You'll kind of see what the differences are and what the challenges are with turntables and what the challenges are with a DJ controller set. You'll kind of have a feel of both worlds, and then be able to apply them and converge a lot of those ideas together.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. That's something we, because at the school, we do emphasize that we want to teach everybody on vinyl, because we do, like you said, strongly believe that if you are able to learn the foundational skills, you can actually take that to any digital medium, whether it's a controller or CDJs. Yeah, that's something we definitely emphasize at the school.
I wanted to bring up a little bit backtrack in terms of even just DJing with a crew. And we always hear from the junkies that they just got so much better because they were a crew, because they spent those nights bouncing ideas off of each other and practicing with each other. I actually have this photo of you and the Fifth Platoon when you guys went to celebrated your 10th anniversary. Can you kind of go into how it was just being a crew and being a young woman in a DJ crew?
Yeah, and you said you had to battle to get in that crew. They didn't just let you in. What did they have you do? They like, can you do this scratch or
Actually, the photo here is our 10th anniversary. This reunion on the right was our 20th anniversary last year.
Got it.
So when we had our 10th anniversary, we had these put on a shirt, and then we had a relationship at the time through Neil with Adidas at the time. We had our sneaker release, which was kind of cool. I never thought
that's so tight.
I know. So we worked with, so the 20-year anniversary was last year, this reunion, and we thought we'd never do that because each of us are in different points of our lives, you know? Some of us still DJ, some of us want to give up DJ, you know? So we're at different points of our lives, and we didn't think we'd do a reunion. But we know that life is short and we want to celebrate each other while we're all here. And so we might as well do it. So, you know, Rolly and Neil worked together to coordinate the event, and I flew out for it. And I really didn't want to fly. Confessions in our chat room. I was so nervous, you know, because for me to revisit old routines was a challenge, routines I haven't done in years. All of us felt challenged. We did a 12-hour practice, like all day long, all of our routines. We couldn't remember some of them, you know. It was fun to kind of go down memory lane, some old routines we haven't done in a long time, and practice for hours for it. But I'm glad that we went. So yeah.
That's so cool. I'm sure that was nerve-wracking. Dang, a 12-hour practice. Yeah, so in this 20-year anniversary, which congratulations, that is definitely something to celebrate. The strength of a crew is something that, you know, doesn't more so exist these days, right? So that's why we definitely love hearing those kinds of stories, for how it was back then. It's such a special time. You know, you say like a table turns and stuff like that. Shout out to Doug. Didn't he go by Sugar Cuts, by the way? I was like trying to remember his DJ name. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That was an incredible time. I know that the guys, the junkies always say that those times in the garage together were so pivotal in their evolution as a DJ. And I just can't even imagine like you being in a room with the X-Men executioners and Fifth Platoon, and you're all just practicing, and you judging these things, and all the while coming out and being like, hey guys, I watched you guys and learned how to do all this stuff low key on my own. That's so dope. I just think that you know, the way that the culture of all of that is so special, and I'm so glad you're here to share that with us. When they when you guys would practice for routines, like especially like for your routine, I'm sure you practiced hours on end, but what would you use as kind of like a driving force to inspire you? Was it the songs that you had put together, or was just like something you just really fell in love with and were really eager to just go out and just share?
Good question. I mean, I love funk a lot. It's like my favorite, and then of course hip hop. And so I often chose a lot of funk type of sounds and music that I wanted to break down, or hip hop songs that I felt spoke to me. But because I loved funk a lot, I would choose songs that I want to, break down, or some hip hop songs oftentimes. But it would just really depend, for us as a crew. Sometimes we created routines together. Me and Rolly did that a lot since we were partners at the time. And, sometimes he had a song and then I'd be like, dang, I want to swap it and steal it because I like that song. And so, we like, he'd like it and I'd like it, and we challenge each other. And like, sometimes he'd give me up a song that he was working on and I'd take it, So we would do things like that. That's what a lot of crews did. Like I know the Executioners did that at the time, where they'd work on a song and then they'd give up the song to somebody else in their crew, and then that person would develop patterns on it. Rolly and I got to do that a lot as crew. He would show me his patterns on it and then I would do it and then I would develop my own. So we kind of did that a lot of routines. In crews, when you're in crews, it's kind of like you brainstorm together a whole song and other people would play. You would go around the tables and see what you come up with on the same song. I don't know if much DJs do that today, and when they have sessions, that's how our sessions always went. They'd hear a track, everybody in the whole room would try to do something on it. And then we're like, dang, what'd you do with that? How'd you do that routine? What was that pattern? And that's how we learn, just being around each other. So for me, when I heard a certain song, I'll hear it on the radio. I'm like, oh, that sounds like, or we'll go digging for records and we'll play a track. We want to choose songs that no one's used yet. Things become signature routines, and we know that a song, they're like, that's a routine that, like the SWAT routine, which Mr. Senator had, is probably one of my favorite routines. And, everyone knew that was Sinister's track, you know what I mean? Because that's his signature routine. A lot of people had signature routines, actually my signature routine, which is Ladies First. And I didn't really have an idea how big that was going to be for me. Actually that was Rolly's idea. He said, you should play around with Ladies First. And I was like, really? And it was hard for me because I was like, I love that song. I love Queen Latifah. I'm a big Queen Latifah fan. But he was like, yo, that song sounds like it would be good for you, especially it says Ladies First. So that was actually his idea. You know what I mean? So a lot of times we give each other ideas. Even my name is not my idea. My name was actually Mr. Sinister's and Daddy Dog from my crew's idea. Because I actually never liked my name Kandi when people called me Kandi growing up, because my given name is Candace, and I never liked the name shortened Kandi for whatever reason, and everybody would always call me either Candy Girl or Candy, and I'm like, no, please don't call me that. And then both Sinister and Daddy Dog was like, you should call yourself Kuttin Kandi. It's like playing on word, cotton, candy, Kuttin. I'm like, and then it kind of stuck on me. Now I love my name, that I have a logo, like several logos over the years, So like, that's how the DJ community was. Like, it was really about like people feeding off ideas. They'll tell you an idea and then you run with it and then you just kind of start doing it.
Yeah, it's awesome to hear, that you were getting support from both men and women, your crew, and then women you didn't know who would, cry at your shows when you meet them. And you've had such a fruitful career from just that moment where you were scared to tell people that you were practicing up until where you were representing for a whole DJ crew at that point, and DJing for yourself and your poetry. And then you build this persona, or like this whole artist that you are, and then you start going into activism. You start using your voice for something else. Let me actually show this slide right here. So I wanted to ask, like, what was a defining moment for you in your DJ career where you decided that you kind of wanted to dive deeper into activism and kind of, in your community?
Oh, yeah, good question. I think, like, for me, alongside of DJing, I was always in community events, like I would do youth events, I would do youth workshops, I would do poetry workshops earlier on. I remember the year when Rolly and I were DJing at the Filipino parade one year, and I was 18 years old at the time. And I think I was 18. Yeah, I was very young myself. And I remember I was on the mic, as always, and I was talking about the importance of us for being there as a hip hop crew, as a DJ crew, and how it was important for us to learn our history. And one person came up to me and was like, and he was older than me, he was in his 20s. He was like, you have a lot to say. I really think you should do more. And this person was part of a Filipino youth organization, and he asked me to come, which is now called FASI. Well, it was called FASI back then in New York City, Filipino American Human Services, Inc. at the time. And so I started doing youth workshops with them, and I helped develop a lot of their, they had early on a conference, and I remember being part of that, bringing workshops, and every time doing poetry workshops there over the years. So that really sparked an interest in me as a young teenager myself, doing more. And then I found myself working at El Puente, which is a very known school in New York City, where I became a program coordinator there, and I taught DJ workshops there as well as poetry workshops there. So I was also doing their membership coordinator work, bringing in young people. So working there, and it was actually founded by Luis Acosta, rest in peace, who passed away 2 years ago. He was part of the Young Lord Party, and if you're familiar with the Young Lord Party, they're they're much like the Brown Berets and of the time in the 80s. They have a whole history within the Puerto Rican community. Doing social justice work. So he was one of my mentors. And at the time I was meeting a lot of people in the poetry circles, folks in the hip hop community who politicized me. So hip hop really politicized me. But what really shaped me and bringing me into the route of organizing was a lot of these mentors. Rosa Clemente, who's a very good friend of mine, one of my closest friends, was a radical, Afro-Latinx organizer, and who really has much to do with what I know now in organizing. She was part of the Malcolm X grassroots movement. So a lot of that, and then other circles at the time, organizations like Gabriella Network, now called Affirm today, and other organizations like Gabriella USA, and a lot of these Filipino organizations really forged in my understandings of feminism, Panayism, and a lot of these organizations I had been part of in my earlier years were like my mentors. You had someone like Ninochka Rosca, who was a political prisoner in the Philippines under Marcos's regime. She was my mentor. So a lot of these people really shaped my learnings and brought me into the work, into the community work. And then I met people like I Was Born with Two Tongues, who became some of my closest friends at the time, known legendary poets in the API community. They held the very API Poetry Summit. So the Poetry Circles also has a lot to do with me realizing that us as Asian Americans, as Filipinx, can have voices too and talk about our struggles and talk about the issues that happen in our own communities. So being part of all of these spheres really brought me in, and then I just got gravitated, just kept going, kept learning. There was so much learning to do, and it's still like that today. Even after 25 plus years being an organizer, I still am learning all the time, especially from the younger generation, because if like as today we see that right now. This younger movement mobilizing has taught me and is continuing to teach me.
That's so inspiring to hear, and I love all the work that you're doing, and I know you're a very busy woman, and in terms of like especially with the organizing and speaking and the education. Um, I did want to. We had a conversation prior to today, in relation to your. You mentioned a high school incident. I don't obviously want to give it away. I want you to tell the story, but that was something that really made an imprint on you, and also where your path led.
Yeah, thanks for that. It's important. It's definitely has an imprint. A lot of the things that I witnessed growing up has much to do with where I am now. I often ask people who are new organizers when I'm training them coming in, what roots you? And what roots me are definitely the injustices I've seen, as well as the joy. And some of those injustices definitely have more impact, whether it's things happening in my own home or people happening in the community. One of those instances are definitely like my high school, which I had shared, predominantly Black West Caribbean community. And I remember my first year in high school, a Black student was shot by the police, and I experienced my very first student high school walkout ever. I was probably 15 at the time. And so that was an experience I never forgot, and how powerful it was to see young people. This is in the 90s, the early 90s, to see young people walk out because they were making a statement of the injustice that happened. Following year after, our high school was the first high school to have metal detectors in New York City. And at the time there were other schools that actually closed down, like Andrew Jackson was a high school that closed down not too far from my high school in Queens, that closed down because they felt it was too dangerous. So when my high school, which is not too far from Andrew Jackson, the fact that they put metal detectors spoke to how policing was back then for us every day. Imagine going into school through metal detectors and then getting random picked and searched, and having to go in an hour early so you're not late for class because you had to go through metal detectors and they had to search your bags. I mean, that was the experience that Black students in my school had to go through, Black and brown youth. So that definitely had an impact on me, even though at the time I was so young to be able to articulate what that meant, but I knew there was something wrong, and led me to where I am now.
Yeah, that's it's it's interesting to see all these things play out now. Now that we have technology and things can be, they say that things aren't getting worse, it's just being recorded, right? So here you were, a young woman, experiencing all these things which got you. So it wasn't just after this whole career as a DJ did you decide to go into these organizations. This has just always been a part of you. This has been your life growing up, seeing these injustices and wanting to do something about it. So I actually have a slide here that shows all these different organizations that you founded and co-founded throughout your career. Can you talk a little bit about, just how, I don't think I've ever met someone with this much of a resume in terms of like finding organizations.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, there's a lot. I wish I could go through all of it. I would say, for example, the Asian Solidarity Collective was an organization here in San Diego where a man with disabilities who had going through a mental health condition got shot a couple of years ago in 2016 by the police when PERT was called onto the scene. And we were going out to all the actions, and those of us who were Asian, we could count how many Asians were coming out to the actions, and we realized we needed to come together and really start doing political education workshops in our communities and build solidarity, cross-racial solidarity across our communities. Different things like Reach Hip Hop actually was what co-founded with myself and us as a group but also since I named Rosa Clemente, we founded that together, where we actually held a protest against a major radio station in New York City, and because of a racist song that was played on air. And then we did a lot of advocacy work there, and we held our very first hip hop rally in New York City against the radio station. We had over 500 people there, and people that spoke at that rally was Dead Prez, Immortal Technique, and that was in 2005. The People's Collective for Justice and Liberation is more current because that started right under COVID-19, where we did the very first town hall on anti-Asian racism. And we had over 3,000 participants that came to that town hall. And since then, we've been doing town halls after town halls every month. And since then, and we had also collaborated with other Asian organizations doing one for the Movement for Black Lives, and that one had about 6,000 registrants, participants that attended. So they're very important in this time that people want to go. And then the University for Justice and Liberation is actually an extension with People's Collective, where we now have a partnership with the Bulletin Center and the Asian American Studies at UC Davis, where we'll be doing a 6-week free seminar. So y'all should sign up for that. And it's really exciting. Because you can, the classes for the UC Davis students are there, 25 seats are already full, but it's open and free to the community, and those seats are not capped. So y'all can join if you want. You could go to People's Collective the number 4, JL.org, and sign up and go to the UJL section and sign up for our class. So it's really exciting because we're forging organizers along with professors and academics together.
Wow, thank you. We're gonna get the links to you guys so we can share all of that and you guys can attend. That's so inspiring to to found so many of those collectives and continue to do the work and continue the education. It's really I can't believe it. Like, it's so amazing that you're doing all of this while being a mother at the same time. And the work doesn't stop. And I really appreciate your time. I know you're a very busy woman and you're speaking in a lot of engagements. Guys, it was really hard to get Kandi just on a phone call to even talk before this. So again, I just wanted to thank you for your time. We're getting to the portion of our chat where we would love for the community to have a chance to speak to you. So if anybody has any questions or just like to say hello to Kandi, please type a 1 in the chat or raise your hand. Please don't be shy. We have some time for some questions today and would love for you guys to talk to. Thank you so much for that, Kandi. So you guys see there the link for that is People's Collective number 4 JL.org. And there's, oh, thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much for sharing it. Cherish, do you have a question? Hi, Cherish.
Cherish, I love you.
What's up, Kandi? What's up, Kandi? New York in the house. What's up? Kandi, I have your Serato box right here.
Oh my God.
No, I just really needed to come correct that I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't see Kandi doing this before me. And Kandi has talked me off the ledge many times about all kinds of things. And I love you.
Yeah.
But I wanted to say that it's so important for me to voice that and for others to see that when you do what you need to do, people see and you inspire. So again, and I say this to you with bone, thank you. Because again, if I didn't see you doing this for me, I would have always thought it's the voice thing. And I was like, extra super bonus points for being in Filipinx. And I was like, yeah, there's space for us for sure. So
thanks so much for that, Cherish. I appreciate that love. I say the same for others that came before me. You know what I mean? Like, there's, of course, Symphony. There was Pam the Functress. Me and her were good friends. I remember when me and Symphony met. We met on AOL. That's how it was back in the day. We all met on AOL in the 90s, and we were all part of the DJ chat rooms. We showed each other love, and me and Symphony were like, let's call each other up, and called each other up, and became good friends that way. And then others too, like in the DJ world, especially women at the time, we just became good friends, you know, and showed each other love. So that love is so important. And I also want to just really make sure for me as a Filipinx is understanding my positionality as an Asian American, as a Filipinx, and the roots of hip hop culture and DJing coming from the lineage of Black movement, Black culture, and African roots as well, you know, stemming to the West Caribbeans. And so really naming that's so important for me in the work that I do, especially as an organizer, and talking about the roots of hip hop culture and where that stems. Yes, any questions, please?
Thank you for that, Cherish. We miss you. Does anybody want to say hello even? No? You guys being shy? No? Everybody's in awe of you.
Yeah, everyone is in awe of you. But we do have, so I'm sure she'll be okay if you guys wanted to DM her or send her something if you're too shy today. We have, we want to say thank you. Thank you so much for your time. We have your information here if anybody wants to. Oh, Myla, someone has a question.
I know that I'm from Chile.
Hello, welcome.
Oh, thank you for being
Super
here.
happy to participate in this meeting. Thank you for the opportunity to hear you. It's super inspiring. I belong to a DJ organization that is only like 3 women. The rest is all men. So I've been following you like Ladies of Sound by Instagram, and I'm super happy to hear from you. I just wanted to say hi.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for coming into our chat. We're always welcoming anybody from anywhere, especially now that we can do this online. So you can be from anywhere around the world and you can join us and hear in these stories. So
yeah, and thank you for being here, Mila. Nice to see you. Hope you see you again. And then we have another question from Stephanie, and then after Stephanie, we're gonna go to Jenny. So Stephanie. Hello.
Hey, thank you so much again for just hosting another community chat like this. It's really inspiring to hear from other women, and especially from women who have been in the DJ community for a while, and hearing these experiences and just your work in activism and community organizing. And I recently, I think just with the political climate that we're in right now, I'm noticing my own personal involvement and just my own self-reflection and kind of how I want to play a role and what that role looks like in terms of advocacy work and just being involved in political social justice issues. And so I'm curious to hear, as you were younger and getting involved with community organizers in your hometown, and as a DJ, and found this intersection between the hip hop community and social justice. Was that something that you felt was something that happened organically, or did you find yourself searching for those spaces, or how did you make those connections with community organizers, and then also bring in this element of hip hop and music and DJing? I'm really curious to hear a little bit more about that.
Those are good questions. Wow. It's like I'm trying to figure out things in 25 years of my life all into one. I think there was definitely different instances, you know what I mean? Hey, Neil, I see you here, my partner. I think there's many things. I think different influences, right? Like that I'd meet. I remember doing shows at a place called Wetlands, which was a prominent space in New York City at the time. And I remember seeing Mamiya flyers, and I was curious. And that one memory brought me, because of my curiosity and wanting to know and learn, I said, okay, let me find out who Mamiya is. And lo and behold, I found out he was a political prisoner. So even those little things at hip hop shows that I was part of. And then when I would go to a hip hop show and I'd see Saul Williams spit some poetry, and then it made me want to dig more and understand more. So then when I would meet other people like Rosa Clemente, and then being part of working with her, it taught me a lot more. So it's really important for me to learn from grassroots organizers. And that's what I do now. As I got older, I got more refined, I got more educated, I kept learning and kept learning and kept learning. And the key thing is to always be teachable, because you're going to find you're going to learn more. And so if it wasn't for doing that, and learning from grassroots organizers, I wouldn't be where I am now to be able to pull in a dialectical approach to my work and how I do it, and why the importance of my work is, like, for me, I don't DJ like that anymore. For me, I DJ only when the community calls me to DJ. You know, like if they want me to DJ, and it has to serve a purpose. So that's how I do my social justice work, is like it has to serve a purpose. Actually, I made a new booking request form, and in that form, it literally says, if you are going to book me for any speaking engagements, any DJ gigs, it has to have an intersectional approach. You have to make sure it serves BIPOC communities, Black, Indigenous, people of color communities. It has to have access and accessibility and accommodations for people with disabilities. So that's how I approach my work. Like, I think it's important that in understanding the movement for Black lives, we understand our positionalities as Asian folks, as Filipinx folks, but also serving the people who are the most impacted and the most harmed in our communities. Like, and any aspect of the work that we do can be, and how small or big they are, can be responsible. Like even my website, I'm redesigning it to be more accessible for people with disabilities. These are things that we can do and figure out that are actually pretty easy. If you could Google what is a more accessible way for your website. There's websites that guide you. So those are simple, but then you could go bigger and deeper by being involved in organizations. Organizations will teach you, will guide you. And if that organization isn't for you, you find a new organization to work with. So, and I say grassroots organizations, you know, because those are really key in the work. And that's who's always taught me, finding those folks.
I love that. I think that really, just hearing you say you DJ when the community calls on you too, more so than for yourself, I feel like that's so powerful to hear, and just in how I think music in itself is such a community builder, and it really connects and brings community together. And I'm curious if you have any advice for, I guess I'm in my mid-20s, and I feel like I want to become more involved and with my community in terms of social justice. Like, what advice do you have in terms of getting involved with grassroots organizations or connecting with community organizers? Yeah.
That's a really good question. Mariam Kaba, who is a known organizer, long time, who's done transformative justice work for years, one of the initial founding folks of the transformative justice movement a decade ago, you know, she really lays it out like, plug in where you can plug in. Where's the work that's already being done in your community and who is doing it? Plug in where you can, and what resources can you do? I think those are the best things that you can do. I think, what city are you from, Stephanie?
I'm in Nashville, in Tennessee. Mm-hmm.
Okay. There might be organizers in Nashville. Like, really look at the organizations that are in Texas, you know, and find out who's there. I would always follow the lead of the most impacted. That's the most number one thing you can do as an organizer. And again, be teachable, be open to learning, be open to recognizing your privileges, because I recognize that I have privileges. While I may have different forms of oppression that impact me, I also have different privileges. So the fact that I have a US citizen status, that's a privilege. The fact that I have a job and I could hold it down, that's a privilege. So recognizing where you have privileges are going to be really key, how you enter a space and with other organizers. And there's definitely a lot more now online to learn so much. And it's being part of those organizations in their community. I'd be down to talk to you more and look through and find out people in Texas, in Nashville specifically, to learn from.
Yeah, I would love that. I would definitely connect with you on social media and reach out. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Stephanie. Also, happy birthday. It was her birthday yesterday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And we have a question from Jenny. Jenny, are you here? Do you want to unmute yourself?
Hi, I'm Jenny, and thank you for sharing your story. Super empowering, especially as you talk about the intersections of all your identities. And thank you, Sam and Maricel, for always creating this space. I really appreciate it. I think the question that I had was, between your identities as like an organizer, an educator, artist, DJ, what sustains you in terms of your energy? Because I think when I think about like the different roles that you play in those spaces, out of curiosity, I would just love to learn that part about you.
That's hard. Thank you for that question, and an important one, actually. I had some learned lessons, you know. In 2012, I had a heart incident where I almost died, you know, and had heart surgery, had a pacemaker implanted, and I had 4 other following heart procedures thereafter. And it's important to really, you know, be there. Thanks for that, Natalie. Yes, Allied Media Conference. Natalie, I'm sorry, I'm surprised I didn't hear you ask a question. I love you. But I think the importance is really finding and carving time for yourself for this work. You know, for me, it's constant reminder, because it's easy to get lost. Neil can share that, you know, like how important health is. Because it really can take a toll on us. And it's so easy, especially in organizing work, that you get lost in it. Like right now, since the pandemic, I've been every day working, like literally more than 40 hours a week, which I have to constantly remind myself to take a break. But what grounds me is, of course, my children. I want to be here for them. I want to be here for the revolution when it goes down, you know, and if I'm not, that's okay. You know, I know other people will, but I need my children. I need my children for me to be here. So I have to constantly remind myself, and it's really hard to do that, I'll be honest with you. So having friends that you trust to give those gentle reminders is going to be key. And that's why building with organizations. I had food delivered to my house yesterday. I was so shocked. But that's my friends in the community, because they know we're here, we got to feed each other. I also try to teach people I organize with to do the same thing. We're not here to be martyrs, you know, we're here to, you know, I believe in mass movement organizing. And what that means is that it should be a collective approach, that everyone has a role, not one person doing everything. Otherwise, you do experience burnout. And the next thing you know, you're going to have a heart surgery and all of these things. And that's also what taught me a lot about the disability justice community, because I got sick. You know, I thought I learned a lot about disability justice because it's a framing I learned in doing intersectional work. But it wasn't until I got impacted and understood the health industry and what that was like that I realized how much more I had to learn about disability justice. So for me, I think we're constantly living in, and there's something that the disability justice work can teach us all, is how to pause, how to savor, how to make time for each other, how to really build with each other. And that's what I've learned, more than just the languaging of disability justice work, but really how to really be and hold space for one another. How to hold space for one another is probably the most important thing we can do in this movement work. So I encourage you to read up on people like Mia Mingus, my good friend, Leroy Moore from Crip Hop Nation, who was a phenomenal disability justice organizer for years. He's the one that actually took me in before I even labeled myself disabled. But, you know, because the state always defines who gets to be a person with disabilities. Like every year I have to prove, because my daughter is a Down syndrome child, I have to prove that she has Down syndrome every freaking year, fill out a paperwork every freaking year, when she's always going to be a child with Down syndrome. So I believe that people can define for themselves, you know. So for me, it's really trying to hold space for everybody, so that way we can be here for the long haul and for the work, for your art. Your art is organizing already. You know, for me as an organizer, I learned organizing from hip hop. So there's always a hip hop aesthetic to when I do community work, you know, to be honest, because my origins of organizing stemmed from hip hop community. it stems from hip hop community always. Because the one thing that the founders of hip hop always taught me was to organize, organize, organize. So my framing didn't come from academic rhetoric, even though I know it now, but it actually came from hip hop that politicized me. Of course, I have fine-tuned my learnings and my language over time because I educated and read a lot, but literally, you know, you are all doing some kind of contribution to an art form created by Black communities, Black culture. And now it's a responsibility. How are we continuing and contributing to the world, to the betterment of this world, utilizing our art form? That's why I always say we're cultural organizers. A lot of people say that. So, you know, finding a balance, finding what sustains you, what roots you are some of the key things that will keep you going and keep you here. Because burnout is real. I've known too many people that leave the art form and they leave the organizing as well. And we don't need that. We need more artists right now, especially in this time, right? We need more uplifting. So I hope I answered that question, Jenny. I know it was a whole lot.
No, you definitely did. Thank you. And I mean, it's always empowering to share these spaces with everyone here. I mean, we learn from each other. So thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. That was a great question. And we're going to show this slide in. Thank you so much, everybody, for your questions today. And even if you just said hello, if you guys want to reach out to, you know, Kandi, or, you know, take a look at her websites, please take a look at the slide here. You can go to djkuttinkandi.com, hiphopruja.com, asiansolidarycollective.org, and People's Collective 4L.org. And then I believe, and thank you to Natalie, she actually dropped some information also in the chat if you guys are interested in taking a part in all of this for the Allied Media Conference that's happening virtually this week. And that's you know, Stephanie, that's something you might want to check out. There's an Eventbrite link in the chat, and tickets are free and available, and there's a lot of accessibility options. So thank you for that. If you guys are interested in any of this, you know, check out the chat, and then also you can go ahead and reach out to Kandi. And then of course, you know, all of our links here, and of course you guys follow us, so I shouldn't be here. But we want to thank Kandi for her time, and we're going to transition now to, this is someone, so you guys already know our Sisterhood Spotlight. Sisterhood Spotlight is something that we've been doing in these community chats where we're highlighting, you know, we first initially started with women who had pivots, you know, as DJs, but it's turned into something more, and we're really, really proud of that. So we have Lene Denise here. She is an artist, scholar, writer, and speaker. It says here on our slide, her work through all types of media reflect underground cultural movements, the 1980s migration studies, theories of escape, and electronic music of the African diaspora. And there's interactive workshops, lectures, performances, DJ services, and soundtrack and music supervision that she does. Please feel free to follow her at Lene Denise, or check out her website, djlenedenise.com. So thank you, Kandi, for that.
It nominated her. So you guys definitely catch her, find her on her socials if you guys want to look into what she does. Sounds like she's kind of just like Kandi. She goes and she does these lectures and, you know, goes into hip hop and all these other decades as well. So yeah, feel free to check her out for our Sisterhood Spotlight. And then just as you guys already know, we always do our live stream listens. If you guys have mixes or anything like that, or live streams coming up, feel free to send them over to us and we can try to share them. And we have here, DJ Millie did a playlist for Amazon. You guys can check that out. Harley Beretta, she's in our community. She has a new mix out. And then this Sunday, our Ladies of Sound girls are gonna be live streaming on the It's Fresh Fam Twitch. So you guys are definitely welcome to catch that. They're gonna be spinning from 12 to 2 o'clock, right? So you guys can definitely check that out. And then, of course, as you guys know, on Thursdays, we do our wellness series. This is not just for DJs, it's made for DJs, but it's not only for DJs. So we'll do different sessions. This week we're doing yoga, and it's by our girl DJ Raito. She's actually both a DJ and a yoga instructor. So she has this specific session that she does called Yoga for DJs. So I know that when we practice a lot, our backs start hurting, our wrists start hurting. We're just so kind of stiff because we'd be practicing so much on those tables bunching over. So she has some really dope stretches for us. And then next Thursday, we have our performance coach, Camille Soler. She is the founder of The Ultimate Life. We're going to be working on mastering your mindset. So Thursdays are really great for your mind, body, and soul. So you guys are definitely welcome to register for that.
Yeah. And by the way, so y'all don't know, I don't DJ. I'm on the business side of things. Highly recommend attending this yoga workshop. I tried it and I was like, yes. Ryan's really awesome. So you guys do not have to be DJs to attend Yoga for DJs. So just so you guys know. So thank you. And we do have an amazing woman next week, Sasha Marie from Selection. So please join us for that next week, Tuesday at 6 p.m. And you guys, please thank Kandi. Thank you, Kandi, so much for your time. Shout out to Neil Armstrong for joining us here in the chat. Thank you for your support. Kandi, I'm so inspired by you. I definitely want to continue the conversation with you and everything that you do. And I really, really love everything that you talked about today. And your journey is really, really, really special. And I'm glad you were able to share that here with us and with our community. Thank you to everyone who has questions. Please go ahead and say goodbye to Kandi, guys. And thank you, everyone that's here today.
Thank you so much for having me here. I appreciate and love y'all. Shout out to all my crews out there, especially the Platoon and Anomalies.
Thank you so much. Thank you for all your insight. This was such a great chat. And you guys will always have this to rewatch after. So just keep a lookout for that, and we'll be sending those over to you guys. So thank you so much. Thank you, Kandi, for your time. We appreciate you. This is not going to be the last time because we have so many things to cover.
Yes. Thank you, Kandi. Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.